Australia's workplace laws could be in for a big shake-up as the federal government looks to make long-awaited industrial relations reforms. Attorney General and Industrial Relations Minister Christian Porter has today unveiled the bill, and along with the bill is a suite of recommendations that are measures the government claims will give casual workers more rights.
This is the strongest ever ability to convert from casual to permanent employment. We've tried to find the middle ground. So we want to simplify awards. We don't want people being paid less. There are things in this bill that the unions won't particularly love. There are things in this bill that business groups are not going to particularly love as well.
To discuss this and more, I'm joined now by the Australian's political editor, Dennis Shanahan from Canberra. Christian Porter, Dennis, says this will give businesses the confidence and the certainty they need to invest and hire again, and that's good news, particularly as coming out of 2020 as we are. It would also mean that despite the recent court decision, businesses would not end up having to pay casual workers twice. We're talking about the leave loadings, and then under the decision they get the leave loadings and then they get the sick leave and the annual leave on top of that. What do you make of it all?
Well, look, I think that for a start, though, it's good to see that the government is starting to look at industrial relations reforms. These will be the beginning of industrial relations reforms. They're shaped by the COVID crisis, by the pandemic, and the flavour of the workplace relations discussions is all there about COVID. We're looking at 800,000 people having lost their jobs, so it is an entirely different atmosphere. I think that Christian Porter and Scott Morrison are clearly trying not to frighten the horses. They have finally got around to some industrial relations reform. And some of this threat to private business about the double dipping and almost an estimated $38 billion in back pay, which could be brought against employers, has been around for years now. And so it is time that something's done about it. But I think what Christian Porter and Scott Morrison are trying to do is say, look, this is the beginning. There's going to be more. They're using conciliatory terms. Scott Morrison says we're about cooperation, not conflict. They're specifically saying this is not work choices. They're saying that industrial relations hawks won't like it, and nor will the unions, and nor will the employers. They're trying to appeal to everyone. At least they've started, and casualisation of the workforce is the key issue at the moment, which has been brought forward by COVID.
The issue for the government will be how well they cut through with the workers, because you and I were around, we remember work choices. The unions were incredibly canny with their marketing, and they got to mums and dads and grandparents who worried about kids losing their job if they hadn't, no sense that they had lost their job, but the threat of that coming into play was really what moved votes. On this issue, the unions are out there now. They're out there hard. They've done a lot of, marketing and media work in the last couple of days. That'll keep going. So this is where the government's got to win the argument with the worker, particularly the casual worker, but anyone who has people in their family or in their circumstances that are in the casual workforce, they need to be comforted that they're not going to be worse off.
That's right, Peter. This question, which Anthony Albanese specifically asked in question time today, will the Prime Minister guarantee no worker, not one, will be worse off under these changes? Now, this is an old trick. It's been around for a long time. It was used against the GST. It was used against work choices and effectively against work choices. And I can remember speaking to John Howard about it at the time, that people weren't feeling threatened themselves by the work choices changes, but there were grandmothers concerned about their grandsons, people concerned about young apprentices. So there was a great deal more there for fear. At the moment, I think that the primary fear in the community is about actually getting a job. This is where the COVID has been so important on this. It's changed the attitudes, and I think that while Labor has gone back to the old ploy of saying, can you guarantee no one will be worse off? Scott Morrison had an answer today. It was good to see. He said, well, if you don't have a job, you're worse off. And so it's going to be about job creation. He's not going to make some false promise, some faux guarantee that no one will be worse off. It's impossible to improve anyway. So I think that the government has got to respond, and they are responding in the right way. It's going to be a tough decision. We've seen this before. But as you know, when Tony Abbott was Leader of the Opposition, he had to make a guarantee that his industrial relations changes would not leave anyone worse off. This is a very powerful campaign. Scott Morrison's fired his first answer to it today in Parliament.
And I have to say, if Scott Morrison can win the debate on this issue, and it'll go into next year, we know Labor are casting doubt whether they'll support it. It'll go off to a committee. It's the usual way. It'll come back, for debate, let's say in March, February or March, that sort of time frame. If Scott Morrison can frame his legislation and win the debate with the community from the get-go, I think it's a poor portent for Anthony Albanese's leadership, and I know the unions will throw plenty of money at it, but it will show sort of where the battle lines are going into the next election campaign, to see the dominance of the PM in particular on this retail narrative and how much people trust him on big issues like this.